Hi there, Scott Hamilton, back with another podcast review of the streaming TV show The Witcher, now showing on Netflix. I am a fan of the books and the video games. There are 8 books, there's been 3 video games, the third one being by far the best of the games. Done by a small company, too, who really paid a lot of attention. If you've never played the Witcher games, highly recommend getting into the third one. It's excellent. When they decided to make a TV series, they were actually going to make a movie, if you read up about this, but they decided that there is so much material, they just couldn't figure out how to make a 2.5-hour movie out of it. A series seemed like a better idea, and I totally agree. Series was created by Lauren Schmidt-Hisrich. She's worked on shows like West Wing, Justice, Parenthood, Private Practice, Daredevil, The Defenders, and The Umbrella Academy. She is the showrunner and creator of the show. And she's been working with and got the blessing of the original author, Andrzej Sapkowski. He's a Polish fantasy writer. The Witcher books are his most famous, and they've been translated into 20 languages, so they are quite popular. The show stars Henry Cavill. You remember him as Superman. He's also been in things like Man from U.N.C.L.E., which I thought he was great in, and The Last Mission Impossible, he was a bad guy. No spoilers in these reviews. But the show is very well done, whether you're a fan of the books or not. The first episode is kind of an overview to get you into the world. The second episode kind of focuses on the other 2 main characters of Ciri and Yennefer. And then the show really picks up in the 3rd episode, and in the 4th episode, it kind of turns things upside down and blows your mind a little bit. So again, no spoilers in here. I really enjoyed the show. I will even admit that the 2nd episode was like, okay, we need to pick things up a little bit, but it is more than worth watching to get all the way to the end, and how it ends is just about perfect to set up a 2nd season, and we are getting a 2nd season probably in early 2021. It's going to take a while. It actually they filmed this from October of 2018 through May of 2019. So then it took 6 months to finish the special effects and get it on Netflix. So it is not easy to whip out these 8 episodes, and I think they did a fantastic job. The acting is all high end, and I've got to give kudos to Henry Cavill, who played Superman in several DC movies. He was also great in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and he was the bad guy in The Last Mission Impossible. He's done a fantastic job. He, by the 3rd episode, is definitely nailing the character. If you watch any interviews with him, he is a huge gamer. I mean, he would rather sit and play video games than go out in public because he's tired of photographers and the lifestyle and all that, but he likes being an actor and really enjoys that. But he loves sitting at home playing video games, and he's played the Witcher video games. He's read the books, and he is very well versed in the universe. And when he talks about it, you can tell that he's not only read but studied these novels to get this character correct and did a fabulous job. It is not exactly like the books, and it's not supposed to be. It is definitely not exactly like the games, and it's not supposed to be. The games have great voice acting and altogether great storylines, and the books are very much worth reading. But as I've said in previous podcasts, books and video games are apples and oranges to TV shows and movies. And this really does feel like a long-form movie. There's a lot of action in it. There's quite a bit of special effects. There's quite a bit of adult content, by the way. It's definitely TVM or rated R for quite a bit of nudity and quite a bit of violence. And I didn't have a problem with any of that. Another person who does great, I mean, all the acting is pretty high level in the show, but Anya Chalotra is freaking amazing as Yennefer. The transformation that occurs in her character, the growth from the beginning to the end. I mean, for such a young actress who's only done 3 or 4 things before this, does an incredible job. But everybody in the show is great, and I like the fact they didn't use a whole lot of familiar actors to play roles, because this definitely feels like its own world. I will say this, I am tired of reviewers comparing it to things like Game of Thrones. It seems like whenever a fantasy comes out, before Game of Thrones, everybody compared it to Lord of the Rings, and then a fantasy comes out after Game of Thrones, and, well, it's not Game of Thrones. You know, there are millions of fantasy books out there and role-playing games and video games, and fantasy is a huge, huge genre. And that everybody has to compare this to another TV series on another network is doing it a disservice, because The Witcher stands on its own. There's 8 books to draw from. There is a great wealth of mythology involved in the show. And if you take the show on its own merits, it is really well done. The elixirs are well played. You'll learn what those are all about. That's a big part of the Witcher character. You learn more about the character as the show goes on and who he is, why he's a quote-unquote mutant in this fantasy world. Like I said, acting is high quality. Production values are really high quality. It's definitely got a huge Netflix budget. It is epic in every sense of the word, but never gets bogged down in the epicness. It still is a character story about these 3 main characters, Ciri, Yennefer, and Geralt. And I really enjoyed the show, and like I said, the way it ends, I'm ready for Season 2. It has been green-lighted as Season 2, but it's going to take them 3/4 of a year to film, and then another 6 months or so to finish special effects. And thankfully, they're just getting started with the storylines from the books and everything. I mean, by the end, well, I can't do any spoilers, but let's just say we're only getting started. This is the tip of the iceberg getting into the Witcher story. So if you haven't streamed it yet, it debuted on December 20th. I got through the whole thing pretty quickly, actually. Episodes range from an hour to 1 hour 6 long, so it's definitely a meaty show. There's a lot to it. But if you like fantasy stuff, if you like sword and sorcery stuff, you're really going to dig it. I think I've only had 1 or 2 friends of mine say they couldn't get into it. Most people are like, it's really good. And a lot of people have already streamed it, all 8 hours plus, and are re-watching it. There was a great thing this morning that the showrunner, people were saying, what do you think about some of the bad reviews? And she's like, everybody's talking about this Entertainment Weekly review where these 2 reviewers admit that they watch like half of an episode and then skip forward 5 episodes, and then they spend the rest of the review bashing it. That is the most unprofessional review I've read in a long time, because a professional reviewer will, give you a good reason why they don't like something. But these 2 didn't even watch it. That they're dissing things about it and not having had watched the whole thing is just professionally embarrassing to me. And if I were Entertainment Weekly, I know they tend to, it's not one of my favorite magazines. It was when I was a kid, but I would be embarrassed if I were the publisher to have published that review. They give it an F, and really they talk about his wig, and they talk about it's not this and it's not that, and it's just not a very good review. And I will never pay attention to what those 2 reviewers, they're so flippant about it. They just sound like 2 kids who are bashing something like the trolls who bash Star Wars. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous anyway. But anyway, the showrunner was asked about that and some of the other negative reviews, and she's like, what would I really care about? The reviewers who didn't watch the whole thing, or those that streamed all 8 hours in a day or starting their second watch? She said she's effing thrilled. So really like what she had to say about it. And as with all things, watch it for yourself. Don't listen to critics or people who review it like me. Had a guy over the weekend start bashing the new Star Wars without having seen it and based on things he heard on the internet. Go see these things. Go listen to music on your own. Stop doing everything through Rotten Tomatoes. And if it's something you're interested in, if you grew up with Star Wars like I did, go see Rise of the Skywalker. It rocked. And if you grew up on fantasy and you like Lord of the Rings and you like Game of Thrones, you will like that. It is not like those things. Witcher is definitely its own mythology. But it is in that genre and a very great example of that genre. So The Witcher, it's now streaming on Netflix, all 8 episodes. The only bad thing is we're going to have to wait a little more than a year to get another season. Ugh. I'm Scott Hamilton. I'm ROCKFILE. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen to this podcast. If you're downloading or streaming, great. Please subscribe on Spotify, Google Play, iTunes. You can ask Google Assistant to find ROCKFILE podcasts. You can ask Alexa to listen to ROCKFILE podcasts on Apple Podcasts. I also have a Patreon page if you'd like to check that out. If you're not familiar with that, that is the way you can help content creators like myself fund new things. I have big plans in 2020 to do some YouTube videos and things like that. So very much appreciate everybody who's been with me so far. We are into the 90s on these podcasts, and that's pretty quick to be generating this much content. So thank you so much for being part of the journey and for listening.